Welcome all you amplifier nerds out there. Yeah, people love it, people hate it. We have a Mesa Boogie caliber 50 plus on the bench. Well, yes, you're right, Carlos. This amplifier we have now on the bench is tone dead. Well, of course, it's not the 100-watt version that Carlos Santana plays, but his legendary comment gave birth to the name of the whole amplifier series. Alright, let's go and make that thing boogie again. The first issue I spotted during the first inspection was one of the output tubes was stone cold. Here it is. You can see the milky white coloration inside the tube, which points to a loss of vacuum. So no doubt this tube is faulty. But let's verify that theory on my trusty old 1966 tube tester. Oh yes, this tube is dead and gone. So let's take a look at the second output tube and see if the other one works. Again, it's labeled Mesa Boogie and it has got a red dot, and we're gonna discuss later on why Mesa Boogie has this color code for their tubes. At least this one is heating up. Well, this second output tube is weak as well. But there's still the question, what caused the tube fail? Is it just because they're old and worn out, or is there another reason? We will see. Let's start with an overview to get an idea what's on the bench. Well, this unit is equipped with a Black Shadow speaker made by Celestion, a pretty legendary one. Here's the faceplate, pretty straightforward. Volume master, lead master, treble, bass, middle, and reverb control. And presence control. Then we have an equalizer. And the switches for the equalizer standby on and off. And the volume knob is a push-pull pot to switch between clean and high gain. And look, here's some information about the age of this unit. January 1991. So, unbelievable, it's more than 30 years old. We can take a look at the circuit board. Note that the reverb unit is mounted inside the chassis, only secured by springs. Man, it's right above the output tube sockets, close to a couple of 100 volts. Imagine that. Something breaks or gets loose, man, that will be a big bang. What a stupid idea. And look, here's the cause for the trouble we have, I assume. The bias circuit is toasted. And this is one of the reasons amp techs hate Mesas. Heat damage is really a common problem. In this case, open solder joints and burnt traces in the bias circuit will drive the tube nuts. And if you don't have a negative bias voltage on the control grid, there is no limitation of the current that flows between cathode and anode, and the tube will red plate and finally commit suicide. And by the way, Mesa Boogie is building amps with hot glue, and painter's tape. Of course, a replacement of the electrolytic caps is necessary after 30-something years. And to prevent the damage of the delicate circuit board, I peel off the plastic cover of the caps because they are glued to the board, and then it's easier to remove them. At least I try to peel the cover off because, man, the blade is so blunt and dull. I could sit on it without doing me any harm. The sensitive circuit board is another reason why MTechs hate Mesa Boogies. They have very thin traces, and it's a double layer board. There are traces on the upper side and on the underside of the circuit board, and that makes troubleshooting and repair even more complicated. So finally, I cut through the plastic cover of the cap, now snipping the leads. And look, you can remove the cap easily, and then I can peel off the plastic cover and do no damage to the board. To get access to the underside of the board, I have to desolder a lot of wires, so it's a good idea to have kind of a road map. Of course, not that kind of road map, stupid. No, I took a lot of pictures. I wrote down the color codes of the wires. So before I started to disconnect all the wires, I really made sure that I know where they were when it comes to the reassembling again. Well, I don't know if I mentioned that before, but MTechs hate Mesa Boogies. And when my customer showed up with this thing, I'm a good guy. I try to help people. And he told me that his budget is quite small. So I have to make this repair as cheap as possible. And later on, you will see what I'm doing to keep the cost low. But as you can see here, to take out the board is quite labor and time intensive. With the standby switch and the equalizer switch need to be removed too. Alright, that's done. Here they are. And another thing is this connector on the board. The cables and wires are very stiff. To flip the board, it needs to be disconnected as well. But before I flip the board, I snip out the screen grid resistors. They will be swapped to metal film resistors because I want them to be more reliable. Come on. These carbon comp resistors tend to drift over the years, so it's a good idea to swap them out. Come on, you little sucker. And look, they're actually out of spec. Instead of 470 ohms, they drifted to 534. And the other one is drifted to. Here we have 520 ohms. Well, I already changed to filter capacitors, and there are 2 more left. I'm still fighting with my old blade, but you can see that this method works pretty fine when a capacitor is glued to the board. Okay, the last one. Really, I have to get myself a new blade. Ooh. I'm gonna J-hook the new capacitors to the old leads because I don't want to put unnecessary stress to the sensitive board. A J-hook is not very elegant, that's true, but these leads are very thick and it will be a solid connection. And here's something that was not visible while these capacitors were in place. Look at these things. It seems like they are leaky. There's crusty stuff coming out of the capacitors. Okay, yeah, flip the board and we can take a look underneath. Look, this area is charcoal. Maybe I have to bridge these traces. We will see that solder joints are cracked open. But before I'm going to rebuild the bias circuit, I'm going to solder in the new screen grid resistors. And here's another footnote for you. Don't trust the schematic that Mesa published. In this case, the resistors in the bias circuit had completely different values compared to the schematic that I found. Well, there are different methods to rebuild burned areas in a circuit. People like to use turrets. I would rather go with this eyelet board. There is enough room in the chassis, and I could run wires from the outlet board to connect everything again. But we are not living in a perfect world, and as I mentioned before, my customer has a quite small budget. So I have to do the job quick and dirty without using an eyelet board. Oh, and here's another reason why Amtecs hate Mesas. The wires are very stiff, and when I flip the board, they broke off the board. So either you desolder all of them or expect a bit more labor afterwards. Alright, time to grab the road map and the solder iron and connect the multitude of wires again. When it's all done, we will have a short summary of the work that has been done so far. We have new HD and filter capacitors. All the electrolytic capacitors are brand new, and you can see the bias circuit, new resistors lifted up from the board to have a good heat dissipation. The new screen grid resistors and 2 1 ohm resistors to ground to measure the bias easily. The value of the resistors in the bias circuit is raised to 3 watts. And on the underside, I had to bridge one trace. Everything is not looking beautiful, but it works and it's solid and it will last. So, shall we dare a first test now? Yes, but of course not without my current limiter hooked up, because you never know. The limiter looks inconspicuous. How about the voltage? Let's take a look there. Okay. Plate voltage of 398 volts. That looks good. Green grid 377. That's all right too. And the negative bias voltage, remember, the negative bias circuit that provides it was toast. Minus 42.6 volts. Perfect. Everything looks promising. Of course, all the voltage will rise a little bit without the current limiter. So we have 480 volts on the plate. How about the grids? 453. And the negative bias voltage is 51.4 volts. Let's plug in a guitar and we take a look at how this Mesa Boogie Caliber 50 Plus behaves. Well, the reverb seems to be a little bit weak. But anything else is working pretty perfect. I'm happy with that. As I mentioned, the reverb seems to be a little bit weak. So let's swap out the driver tube. In most cases that will do the trick. Let's see if it will help in this case too. Yep, that's much better, though it's not a Fender reverb. It has not the deepness and intensity, maybe because of the tiny reverb unit with the short springs. But anyhow, thumbs up. And here's a look at the new tubes made by JJ. They are especially matched as a replacement for the red label Mesa Boogie tubes, but for 1/3 of the cost. So if you don't want to break the bank, you have to consider to go with these JJs. As I mentioned before, my client's budget is a bit low. But anyhow, you have to use the tubes with the right color code, because in Mesa Boogie amplifiers there's no way to adjust the bias. So now it's time for a final sound example. Don't expect me to play some Carlos Santana tunes. That's an unsolvable task for me. But at least you will get an idea how that caliber 50 plus sounds like while I'm fiddling some tunes. Well, see you next time. Take care. Well, thank you, Carlos, but I wanted to say that